Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Capes Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our new friend, Matt Rainwater. We're here to break down Trailer Park Warlock and everything in between. And holy crap, was this such an insane ride. I mean, we're talking people getting turned into horses. We're talking rattlesnakes with guns. They're strapped out there. We have clay golems named Earl. What is going on? Welcome to the show, man. How have you been, man?
I've been doing good, just working, just getting, basically getting the 5th season of Trailer Park Warlock ready. And it's been quite a doozy because, you know, where you're at right now in the story in season 1, it's very much, I mean, it's all introductory stuff. And then after season 1, it really takes off into world building and it gets into lore and like, it goes in very different places, I think, than a lot of people expect when they're reading the very first season. But that first season is one of my... It's close to my heart because that was me, you know, that was a place for me to kind of really cut my teeth as like an independent creator and just sort of figure things out. And also just like, there's so many fun gags that I go back to and look at and go, I actually like, it's a nice feeling to go back to a work and go, I actually kind of knocked it out of the park on that one. Like, that's actually not too bad. Like,
you know, Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's just nice. It's a nice feeling to have that acknowledgement, that self-acknowledgement, and then having acknowledgement from readers where you go, you know, oh, this actually still holds up. Because a lot of stuff that I did previously before Trailer Park Warlock, I go back and look at it. It doesn't hold up quite as well. And I think that's just because I'd hit that level at that point where I was able to say, you know, I had the experience under my belt to be able to actually make some decent stories at that point. So.
No, absolutely, man. I love all the different feelings and vibes I got from this. I mean, I almost want to ask, is there any influence from like Dark Souls at all? It felt like some of the character...
the Lich, a lot of people actually... bring it up that the Lich actually kind of looks like I can't remember what his name
Nito?
is. Yes, exactly. And you know, I didn't it wasn't something that I like consciously thought of, but then when I looked back I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely Nito.
And then the rat, you know, I how long has this been out for?
I started Trailer Park Warlock back in 2011.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I wasn't like spoiling anything, but when he falls down into the dungeon and there's that big rat, there's like a boss that is like a big rat in Dark Souls 2. Right. So I mean, I was like, is this dude like a Dark Souls? Like I'm a soul.
Oh,
you know,
I mean, I played the hell out of Dark Souls.
Let's go.
So even though I probably wasn't thinking of it intentionally, it's all in my subconscious because. That's all of those, you know, one game over after another.
You know, and another thing that I was really feeling, I guess, Adventure Time almost, with just how like insane it is, like how off the wall, like one adventure literally is like dude getting turned into a horse, and then like they're going up against a rattlesnake. It's like two different polarized opposite ends, and they're just like as crazy as one another. I love it.
You know, there's three big Cartoon Network shows that were kind of big inspirations for me when I was developing that first season, and they were Adventure Time, regular show, and then Steven Universe. Like the Steven Universe stuff sort of more influenced me later on in later seasons, but like regular show had a big impact on me. I loved regular show. It was so good.
Dude. It gets dark too when you look at it from an adult like point of view.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like Benson and stuff. Like he's addicted to the wings and everything. Like
that's something that I also really appreciate. I appreciate about all of those shows is they can be enjoyed on different levels, and so I have tried to approach like drawing and writing Trailer Park Warlock from that perspective of like. Having different levels of enjoyment where you can just enjoy it from a totally gag level, and then not so much in season 1, but in later seasons, there's like I'm implicating and adding in layers of like depth that have to do with just sort of my own interests in like the occult and magic and stuff like that. Like that was all kind of part of, for me, the fun of it, and it was what got me into that obsessive level where I'm able to just really get into the story, basically.
Man, when the Lich was breaking down the spell from the golem and like you drew all like the ancient like relics, like showing like the spell, like how it's gonna be like just horrible. I love that so much. But before we dive too much into this, let's start where it all began. You know, what led you to creating comics? Was it comics, or were you always doing webtoons?
No, it was. I mean, before webtoons, it was comics. I mean, I started at. I don't like a lot of people started as a kid. You know, like one of my earliest memories is beating Kirby's Adventure when I was like 5 or 6. And Kirby's Adventure, like you go back to it now, it's like kind of a dinky looking NES game. But when I was a kid, that was like the most cinematic thing I had ever played in my life. Like,
yeah,
you beat Nightmare. Like the whole Nightmare battle is, for me as a kid, was like this huge thing in my mind, and like scared me as a child. So like it had this impact, this emotional impact on me that I felt like I wanted to replicate it in some way. And I started drawing and like started doing stuff like, oh, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're all mice, or like, you know, just like stuff that kids do. And like, you know, it ended up leading to like drawing Sonic the Hedgehog fanfic. I remember spending like, I don't even know how many months. Like I played Mario RPG and I was like, there should be a Sonic RPG. Oh my gosh,
such a good like game for real.
Yeah, Mario RPG is awesome. And I just had this like this thing in my head as a kid. I was like, well, somebody should design a Sonic RPG. I'll do it. And so I have like a whole sketchbook that's just like monster designs and all this other stuff. So like it's funny because like comics have always been the continuing thread throughout all my storytelling stuff, but I've always been interested in games, video games. I've always been interested in animation. I've always been interested in how all those things interconnect. I ended up choosing, I think, ultimately comics because it was the one way that I could solidify doing storytelling as a craft, because that was the thing that out of all those things, that was the thing that interested me for all of them. Like I love video games, I love RPGs, and I love shooters. Like bullet hell shooters are awesome. I love platformers and stuff like that. I love arcade type games. Those are my favorite right now because those are the one most time to play right now. I don't have as much time to play video games as I used to, but all of the point being is like I just really enjoy the atmosphere, the ambience, what brings all the stuff together, and I love thinking about that, and that's what brought me into storytelling. And so I went to art school at the Savannah College of Art and Design and met a bunch of cool people there, and like that was where I really started finding that obsessive place where I was just like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like I'm
awesome. Yeah.
And I just got hooked into it. And after art school, I had my friend Austin, who was a friend from high school. Me and him decided that we were going to make a story together. So after art school, after I graduated, I didn't have any jobs at the moment. And so I was just like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to draw a book. So
what people do when they get out of school, you know?
Well, and it was one of those things where I'd done a bunch of mini comics, and I was like, well, I can do 24-page comics easy. And it's a weird thing with drawing comics where it's like, at least for me, where you do the smaller parts and then suddenly I start thinking about, okay, I could do this bigger and bigger and bigger, you know? And so we did like I'm trying to remember, I think it's like a 170-page book.
Wow.
Yeah, it was called Garage Raja. I mean, it still exists. I still have a bunch of copies of it.
That's pretty big. That is like like, was that like one of your first like official, I guess, projects?
Yes, it was.
That is big.
I mean, once it's printed and you have boxes of it, you know, it's like, this is official.
Yeah, sure.
I finally cemented this addiction into.
So, were you the writer artist on that, or just artist?
I was the artist, and then my friend Austin was the writer. And,
so how was that for you? That seemed like it was a pretty big project to take on.
Oh, it was huge. The way that I had approached it was that I set a schedule for myself. I was going to do, I think the schedule was 6 pages every week. So like the idea was to do a page a day.
Yeah.
And I had a script to work from because my friend Austin had done the script. And then we were going to publish it online. So we like digitally published it. The website exists still, but I would not recommend going to it because I think that it's actually like very much, I haven't upkept it. So it's like, it's very much compromised and from a security standpoint.
I gotcha.
I plan on, if anybody's interested in ever checking it out, you can do it through my Patreon. I have all the stuff of Garage Raja that I've done up until now that's accessible through that. But basically, we did that for how many years? 2008 to 2011. We did Garage Raja.
Doing 6 pages a week?
Yeah.
Wow.
We did. I want to say, oh gosh, I must have done at least 1,000 pages of that story. And then, because we had a very ambitious goal of making this like kind of a One Piece type story where it was an adventure that kept going on and on. And we eventually, I ran out of steam. To a lesser extent, Austin ran out of steam, and we had to put that aside. But during that time, I also moved to Portland, Oregon for a time, and did an internship at what was at that time called Periscope Studio. It's now known as Helioscope Studio. And that's where I met a previous guest on this show, Ron Randall.
No way!
Yeah. It was interesting. It's interesting to have watched that interview that you did because at the time he was in that transition between I want to start making Trekker as like my main thing, because he was starting to hear things about webcomics and how people were publishing stuff. And me and the other intern, Roxy, we were doing webcomics. He's like, oh, well, what's this webcomics thing about, And he's mastered it. Like he's mastered it better than I ever had any hope of. And for me, he still is a mentor to me in a lot of ways. But him and a bunch of other artists at Periscope Studio really helped me actually cultivate what would become Trailer Park Warlock. Like
that's so cool.
They looked over that first episode with the Equimancer and like gave me a bunch of feedback on it, and helped me really sharpen that story up. And at the time, I had no idea where it was going to go. Like I just was putting it up on the same site that was putting up Garage Raja at the time, just as an extra thing, just like as a side thing I was doing. And so I would release probably 6. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, give me a second.
No,
so every installment was like a 16-page episode. And so I had planned it out. And this is how I do all my projects, where I think about it from a format standpoint and then sort of build upon that. So my idea was every quarter of the year, I would have a 16-page episode to release, and I would release it like that. And I was going to do 10 episodes of Trailer Park Warlock. And so in my head, I was like, okay, in about 2 years plus, I'll be done with this book, and I can maybe release it as a book. I don't know. I just want to make the story, develop it, see where it goes. And so I did that. And during that time, I was hired to be the colorist on the Plants vs. Zombies comics that Dark Horse was releasing. So that was
congratulations, man. That's so
thanks.
Awesome.
No, it was an awesome project, and it was a trial by fire also. So there was another Ron at Periscope Studio who had suggested me for the job. Ron Chan was also an awesome artist, and I highly recommend to everybody. He did a lot of the line art for most of the Plants vs. Zombies comics that I worked on. And I say it was a trial by fire because comics deadlines are tough.
Yeah.
But in particular, the Plants vs. Zombies comics were brutal to work on because each panel is probably about any given panel was at least 8 characters. Because it would be like
and the colors, right? Like so many different colors.
Oh yeah. And I had to really figure out a system to like plan everything out. Like I made this whole big chart of just like all the plants, because there's a million plants in that game. So like Ron Chan's goal was that he had to kind of incorporate all of them into the books in some way, And on top of that, you also have all the human characters. So in those books, there's Crazy Dave, but then there's also the main characters, Patrice and Neil. And they're like they're kids who kind of work a crazy Dave to fight Zomboss, and so you have, I mean, like I said, any given panel is probably about 8 characters, but then you have panels that's like 20 characters or plus. And so anyway, keeping up with those deadlines taught me a lot about how to color effectively, quickly, and proficiently, like in a way where I was doing professional work at an incredible rate.
So was that like a defining moment for you would say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It helped me like gain the confidence to be able to do what I am doing now.
Yeah, because it's like I'm working for Dark Horse, you know.
Yeah, no, that was a big plus. It was cool, and it's one of those jobs that's looking back like still follows me to today. Like like routinely those books are getting reprinted, and people talk about it on Twitter. Like, I had no idea how many people would be reading those books even now. Like, I still like there are a lot of people who will come to read Trailer Park Warlock and then find out like, oh, you were the colorist on Plants vs. Zombies. I have those books. It's awesome, And so
yeah, that has to feel so good.
Yeah, it's a kind of
that's awesome,
cool little continuation, because I don't know, like I felt like when I did Trailer Park Warlock, like all that would be behind me to a certain extent. Like people would forget or whatever, and people haven't forgotten. Like they still love Plants vs. Zombies.
That is so cool. Do you think there's anything in the future for any more comics coming out, or is that kind of like already completed?
Oh, with Plants vs. Zombies? Oh, I think they're still releasing new books. I'm pretty sure because
they got to get you back on, man. They got to continue that legacy.
At this point, I would love to be able to draw. I feel like I've gotten the chops to be able to draw Plants vs. Zombies now, but one day maybe we'll see.
Yeah. But with your current project right now, this was such an awesome read. What was we talked about some of the cartoons. But were there any other influences? This seems like it has a little bit of everything in it, like just like in terms of like just how immersive the universe is.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Trailer Park Warlock, a big part of it is that I really tried to think about a lot of it's nostalgic for me. So it's not made obvious at all in the book, but for me, it's kind of set in the years 1997 to 2000. And I say this because there's no smartphones. The computer technology is very like light if existent at all. Like, I basically try to pull a lot of the humor, a lot of the general vibes and the feel from how I kind of was looking at the world at that time as a kid. And I've always had kind of like a not necessarily cynical, but like kind of sarcastic view of the world, and I wanted to kind of use that humor in the story and use that sort of sarcastic, I don't know, like my sarcastic memories of the 90s and bring it into the story. So there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of the stuff around UFOs or around, alien abduction and stuff like that is centered around sort of my memories of like during the night, like I want to say between 92 and 98, like UFO stuff was huge, and it's becoming huge again.
A lot of that's confirmed like real recently by like the U.S. government. That's like, yeah.
That's the funny part about it is like, for me, it's because I'm not like I always treat everything in the world as like I'll accept it, but I'm skeptical, right? Like I was huge into X-Files as a kid. My dad watched X-Files. I watched it with him. I was terrified of being abducted by aliens, like all that stuff. Like, so I always love stories where you get to kind of, you get to kind of go, oh, I don't know if this is real or not, And I play with that a lot in Trailer Park Warlock later on in the story. I play with that, and I like to kind of go into that territory to a certain extent. Where there's the episode where Jake gets interviewed by the like radio show host, and you get to kind of Darla, meanwhile, who's Jake's friend, gets abducted by aliens, and that kind of plays with that idea because magic gets thrown into it. And so something that becomes a big theme a lot in Trailer Park Warlock is like especially with the kind of magic that's used, is a lot of times you're not sure if something is an illusion or if it's real. And I will confirm that equimancers really turn into horses. They aren't illusions of people.
I love that. I mean, did you have to make that up?
Yeah, that was just, I don't even remember where that, it was just
It's
a funny
ridiculous.
idea.
I love it so much.
It was just like, I don't know, it was one of those things where it was like, I don't know, there are werewolves in the world. What if there were like werewolves that it was horses instead of wolves kind of thing?
And the way he finds out is by throwing a rock at the forehead.
And that was the other part of it. It was like, I don't know, it was just like one of those things where the gag lined up in such a way, because my creative process is sort of, it's sort of chaotic, where I'll just follow it, I'll follow the idea one to the next and see where it goes, which is a headache for my editors, but for me it's really fun because I get to kind of, I don't know, like I like the organic process of creativity where I'm not sure how everything's going to connect, but then when I get everything to connect, I feel like I'm a genius, even though I was just like, letting it fly by the seat of my pants kind of a thing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you said later episodes, though, really do tie into continuity a lot, though, right?
Yeah, and that's why I say it's probably been a headache for my editors, because I always manage to make everything connect, but in the moment, and I'm actually saying this right now because this is kind of where I am in season 5, I'm going to connect all the dots that I set up in every other season previous, so there's this whole world established, and now I have to make sure I'm not overstepping any sort of bounds and all that stuff.
So how do you do that? Do you have like some sort of continuity board, or is there like a little cheat sheet you have?
I need to do that if I do another story.
He's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Because what happens is I have, I'll go through Adobe Bridge, and I'll go through, like, if I generally have everything set up in my head where my memory in regards to the story is pretty solid. And if I have a question for myself, and I try and look at it as, when I'm writing, I try to look at it as I'm also the reader at the same time, which is not, I mean, it only kind of works that way. I try and create like a little persona in my head that's like, doesn't know everything about the story, doesn't know everything that's in my head about the story. And so if I find myself kind of like writing along and going like, oh, I'm not sure if this is exactly how this went in a past episode, I'll just go back and look in the catalog. It's tedious, in terms of checking out continuity, but as far as, it's the best method I've come up with right now, but a continuity board is a much better idea.
Hey, I was just curious about the creative process. Speaking of that, how was it for you transitioning from working just as an artist to a scriptwriter and artist? Because you work as both on this, right?
It's actually been a pretty, I'd say it's been a pretty natural fit. I mean, with all the episodes that you've read so far with Trailer Park Warlock, it all happened pretty organically. And a lot of the times, the ways that I write these stories, I actually will thumbnail it out and I'll draw it out. And I'll get like just a sketch pad and just go to a coffee shop or something and just start drawing. And I'm not thinking about it in that moment. I'm just trying to think about it visually. I'm trying to get all the dots to connect visually. If I can get them to connect visually, the dialogue and stuff won't be a problem. I can just kind of, it's a weird process, because oftentimes I don't have any words figured out for what people are saying until I have drawn, inked, and colored the pages. And then at that point, right, it's a little like, I know. So apparently this was the method that also, like, allegedly Jack Kirby also worked by, where like in old school, like Marvel, the old school Marvel bullpen, like Stan Lee as a writer would just be like, like he would just give a very general premise, right? Like Spider-Man goes to fight Doc Ock over, whatever. And then Jack Kirby would actually do all the story writing on the page like that, and just like just start drawing and going for it, and he was I don't, it wasn't Jack Kirby, it was Steve Ditko, I'm sorry, but would just start all the dots together visually, and then Stan Lee or somebody else would come in and just start putting in the word balloons. So like it's a method that it's interesting too, because
it's almost like looking at it that way. It's almost like they're just like lettering at that point, right? Like, but I've always heard that art should be able to tell the story without the words.
That's how I feel. I mean, I'm biased, granted. Like, I'm biased as somebody who has worked entirely as the visual artist, and I've never been in a position. I mean, I have in the past written scripts before I drew. I just found that it got in the way of the creative process in some ways. Like, it got in the way of me being able to kind of go with the flow of it. Because I couldn't I couldn't visualize the page. And that's another aspect of this too, that's actually like an additional creative challenge, is that working between Webtoon and like print comics, because I do intend on having these exist as print comics ultimately. I always draw the initial story as the print comic and then translate it over into Webtoon. So those first 10 episodes, I had no concept of Webtoon as a format, right? And Webtoon's format specifically for like a smartphone. Like, you can read it on your desktop, you can read it on an iPad, but like you have to format it for the most, the smallest, most constrained medium, right? And that's the smartphone. So because of that, you're actually kind of, unfortunately, to a certain extent, you're kind of limited to what kind of panels you can have. You can't have like wide establishing shots because they get shrunk down.
Yeah.
And you have to put it on like a super vertical.
And then it's gonna offset the whole timeline, right?
Oh, and the other thing too is because your text, like your dialogue and your word balloons, have to be a very specific size to be readable. You can't, you have to move around the word balloons, and sometimes those two do not link up at all when you're trying to put it on Webtoon. So it turned out to be a very interesting challenge in those first 10 episodes.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how hard was it learning to do the Webtoon format?
After the first 10 episodes, I figured it out, but within those first 10 episodes, I struggled a little bit, because I would have to go back and either rework some panels. I think there was, when we were looking through a page, or we were scrolling, there's one panel in the very first episode where the action's tilted vertically, and it's meant to be read as a horizontal shot. And there was literally no other way to do that panel. Because originally in print, it was a horizontal panel.
Okay.
It's just one of those things where it's I learned from then on, it's I can't do this with Webtoon. So
okay, no, that makes sense. Did you, was it hard learning how to lay out your your panels and the scroll, to get things ready for that? It seemed like you started to really take advantage of it at one point later on, with the clay golem when he was falling. I loved how the scroll, you scrolled and you see him falling, and then it's blunk. So it seemed eventually you kind of got into the some of the more well-known uses of the scroll line.
I laugh too. I'm laughing too because the very first time I did that, this is another trivia part. So when I first did that episode, it was part of the discovery contest to just Webtoon was doing this discovery contest, and you just put out what you're working on, and maybe you get placed or whatever. The first time I did that episode, I made that scroll ridiculously long, to the point that people who were reading it were I wasn't sure if my phone bugged out or not. It just kept going and going and going, and it's still pretty long in the final version of it. But that was why I was laughing. So what happened was, I ended up getting picked up by Webtoon. I didn't place anything. with them in the contest. It was just like an editor liked it. They had seen it, and they contacted me asking like, "Oh, would you be interested in working with us with this comic?" I was like, "Sure." So I
That's
ended up
really cool.
Yeah, it was.
How'd you feel about that? Like how when you got that call?
It was awesome. I felt like it was a really cool moment. The contest and then that moment, because
like not getting placed, you're like, oh, and then you're like, they're like, hey, but we want you, and you're like, oh, well, crap. Could have gave me funny. Like 4th place or something. Like,
well, it's funny because not placing didn't bother me so much, because what I was really excited about was all the validation I was getting out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was getting more people reading it and following it than I ever had any hope. Like I had no concept of how well it was going to do, but I also had, like there's a part of me that was like, this is a pretty good story. I feel like a lot of people would like this, and then it was this really cool confirmation of that. And so even though I didn't place, I got like honorable mention or whatever, I was like, okay, that's fine, at least people like the story.
Yeah.
I always try and approach whatever I'm doing with that kind of spirit, because I don't want to like resent the process of making it, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that can really get in the way of like you to appreciate what you're doing. And
yeah,
I think it's something that happens to a lot of creators over time, and especially as they get older. They kind of start to resent, they kind of start to resent the craft, because they see it as like an encumbrance or burden, when in reality it's the thing that you did because it was fun, because you did it as a kid and you had no care about like, is this going to be successful, is this going to be profitable, whatever.
It's almost like once it becomes a job, that's what changes it all. But that's what you strive to do, right? It's like a catch-22 almost.
It really is, and it's something that I've been trying to talk a lot about on my YouTube channel, because I want to find ways of talking to artists about this kind of topic, because I've seen it so much, I've experienced it personally, and I just don't want, I don't know, like I look at my own experience and I think, okay, I'm gonna do the best that I can to not try and replicate that anymore, because this should be viewed as sort of, if not a gift is kind of a strong word, but like just like I don't know, it's like,
I would say a gift. Not everyone could. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's cool. I was just gonna say it's cool to be able to do it, and it's something that I just don't want people to take for granted. Basically, mm-hmm. That's all.
No, I would say it's a gift. I mean, I can't draw. Maybe a stick guy. I'm gonna give writing a swing. But and I know it comes with practice and everything, but I am like such a perfectionist that I stare at the creative process and the growth, and I just hate it. And I'm like, I just wish I could be better. I can't do it.
I understand that completely, because like here's the thing about the creative process. The unfortunate part is you only get better by just doing it more.
I know.
There's literally no other way, right? Like there's no other way of the only way to make it happen faster is if a hyperbolic time chamber existed.
Or you just draw more, right?
yeah, just draw more. Yeah.
No, that is so awesome. So how many seasons do you have altogether? I know you were mentioning maybe nearing up the end or getting close to it.
Yeah, so season 5 is going to be the final season. At this moment, currently published are 4 seasons of Trailer Park Warlock. And each season covers sort of different elements of the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Each season's kind of its own contained thing to a certain extent. Well, with the exception of season 4, but season 1 is just like introducing the world and introducing Baker and then introducing the world that he lives in. Season 2 introduces Jake Baker's history mm-hmm. and some history of the world that he lives in, and sort of expands into certain world building elements within the story. Like, for instance, we find out that this is it's like America, but it's like slightly askew in the sense that Louisiana is a state dominated by what are called feeders, and feeders are basically people who use magic to look like vampires, to live like vampires, but they're not actually vampires. And Jake ends up going back to Louisiana for various reasons because he had an apprentice there, or no, he apprenticed there underneath a vampire warlock named Pointu. And that season gets pretty psychedelic as well because it gets into sort of like weird magic stuff. It gets into the world history. So it's actually 2 is one of my favorite seasons because I really pushed myself into writing something I've never written before and doing like an intense amount of research to establish the setting the way that I did. Seasons 3 and 4 all follow a separate storyline. So like
Hello? We might have lost him. Or maybe no, hold on. My signal. One of our signals. Hold on 1 second. We'll be right back, guys. Let me see, add a stream. There you go.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're good. The beauty of doing this post-production is I can edit from right there. You're gonna have to throw your hand up or something so I can like clean. I'm just playing. Do you remember where you were, or did that kind of throw you off?
No, I was. Okay. So season 3 of Trailer Park Warlock. Season 3 follows a possessed penguin that comes into Colorado Springs and starts getting all the kids into this card game called Tarot, which is like a play on words of Yu-Gi-Oh and Tarot. And
were you a big like Yu-Gi-Oh player growing up?
I was actually more of a Pokemon person, but Yu-Gi-Oh was also within my realm of things. So basically, a lot of that plays on, for me, in middle school. There's this whole thing of like a lot of people where I was living, a lot of the adults did not want kids to play trading card games.
Yep, they thought it was the devil.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically playing with that idea. And Jake gets kind of caught up into it. And it incorporates like the God of Discord set gets involved with it. And things go haywire, basically. And then season 4 takes stuff from that season and then basically expands on it in season 4 and season 5 conclude everything. And that's a very, very like quick way of trying to sum that up. There's It gets a little ambitious. That's the best word that I can find for it.
How's it feel like nearing the end of this? I mean, it has to be almost like bittersweet, right?
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Originally, I wanted to do 11 seasons for Trailer Park Warlock, but I found one of the things is I found after doing season 2 and then trying to keep the pace of the story that it would be very difficult to do that for as many as I originally intentioned, which was 11 seasons. So like, I felt like 5 was a good number to stop at and would be good for the pacing of the story. And also like, I didn't want people to get bored of it either. I didn't want it to just run on forever. I do know that for myself, and something I'm kind of realizing as I'm coming towards the end of it, there was a certain feeling of completion that I wanted to get in a story that I hadn't ever gotten before, where I did something that was kind of big and became kind of epic, because I just kept wanting to do that kind of story. And so I'm like, okay, I just need to get it out of my system, but end it as quickly as I can, and then move on to something else. So.
No, I love that. I gotta ask though, what made you want to start with the trailer park? Like, what was your inspiration for that?
I think one of the big things was there's this artist that was working under at Periscope Studio, or was mentoring under at Periscope Studio, and he just had, I don't know, something about him just evoked this idea in me that I started drawing like a bunch of like I always had this idea of like a magician who lives in a trailer park. I
Hmm.
had family who lived in trailers. Like I had friends who lived in trailers. I grew up in like Southwest Louisiana, so like there are trailer parks around. It's part of the environment. It's part
Yeah,
of
there's
just
trailer
how
parks. I'm in Upper Ohio. I mean, there's trailer parks all around me too.
it's one of those things. Like we get tornadoes all the time. So like I
Yep.
remember so many messages like if you live in a mobile home, you need to seek safer shelter, all that stuff. So it's just
We're
always
getting the
something that
bathtub,
was
right?
yeah, get in the bathtub for sure. It was one of those things that was just like part of my life that I wanted to incorporate because I wanted to have a story that incorporated people that like kind of get overlooked in society to a certain extent. And I feel like for me, like as a general theme that I kind of want to follow um stories is to kind of do that. People used to talk about like the everyman or whatever.
Hmm.
The idea that like there's a kind of character that almost anybody can relate to,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
when you look at it historically in storytelling, that's often like you go to Charlie Chaplin, right? Charlie Chaplin's kind of motif was often like the hobo, like somebody who is down and out, kind of having a harder time, because a lot of people go through that in life, right? Like that's something that we all on some point or another in our lives relate to, being in that position where maybe
Yeah.
we're struggling financially, maybe we're like not having the best time of it. But I think it's a very American kind of story to
No, it
have this
is.
sort of idea of like if you work hard enough, you kind of elevate and get to bigger levels, right? Or you can change sort of the position that you're in your life. But regardless, like for me, it was an aesthetic that I think also matches well with the ideas of like the occult and with magic, because I think there's this idea of like you can change your own personal standing in the world without
Hmm.
having to rely on sort of the stereo or not stereotypical, but like the without having to rely on like the typical power structures of the world, so to speak. This is the best way that I can try and define it, but like um I just like the idea of like you I have kind of an anarchic spirit to some extent, so I think a lot about like um how to empower and liberate yourself, right, without
Okay.
like having to like rely on sort of the ideas of money and stuff. We all
Hmm.
do. You can't. It's unavoidable to a certain extent, but I think that it has a certain amount of uh, ability to kind of free something internally. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
feel like you have this inner strength, basically, and that's something that I try and evoke a lot, like in later seasons of Trailer Park
I
Warlock.
love that
So
answer. That answer was that was
thanks.
awesome. Holy crap! I think this is a perfect time. Let's go ahead. Let's go through episode 1 real quick. It's not super long, so let's go scroll through it, and then we will begin wrapping
Sure.
things up. How important is it for people to read for you? Like in terms of like helping the algorithm. Like what can people do to help get the name out and get the word out for you?
Oh, I mean, the best way is really just like share a link of this on your social media. Just talk if you really like the story. Talk about it with your friends and family. I don't want to ever make people feel pressured about talking about. But if you enjoy this, like share it with your friends and family. There's always something I feel like in this story that people can relate to and enjoy.
Hmm.
That's the best way that I can think of. Or if you follow me, just retweet my stuff. That helps a lot.
No, absolutely. And retweeting is 100% free. Word of
Yeah,
mouth is the best because it's free. And it doesn't cost anything to read this. Episode 1 is 100% free to read. Are all the other seasons free as well, or is there any
that's
sort of
correct.
paywall?
There's a paywall that comes up in new seasons. So
Okay.
when I release season 5, the first 3 episodes will be free, and then if you want to read ahead before their like weekly release,
Hmm.
you have to pay a little bit to do what's called a fast pass. And so a fast pass just gives you early access, basically.
I got you. So right here we begin at the trailer park, and I love this right here, Jake Baker, Warlock. And then is this like a cat down below? I guess I didn't notice this.
That's supposed to be a shadow.
A shadow?
I can see how that looks like a cat, though. Yeah.
Okay.
It's supposed to be the shadow of the woman who steps up later on.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's just with it pulled up on my computer, I was like, okay, that's something I didn't notice.
I see the cat.
And then so we see something getting stamped down rather fast. And I love this too. It didn't stick at first, so he stomps it down again.
Jake stamp time.
So this is an interesting stamp. What's this all about?
So it's basically a sigil that Jake uses throughout this first season, and he actually uses it again later on at the end. It's I don't ever give an explanation for why he's doing it here, but the general idea is that he's charging the stamp to kind of give it power. Yeah.
Are these symbols that you created, or is there any like actual like? Are they real or?
All the inner symbols within the pentagram thing, I just totally kind of put together. There's not any particular. When I made this initial sigil, like I didn't give any particular thought to it. I was like, oh, this looks cool.
No, it does. It does. That's why I wanted to ask. I really love like all the different symbols and it almost looks like different runes in it as well.
I have a lot of fun making that stuff, but a lot of times it's completely aesthetic, and I'm not putting a lot of thought into it. I mean, this shirt that I'm wearing right now is actually a symbol that I put a bunch of thought into, and I'm not gonna explain it at all. But it's just like for me, it was like my sister actually printed this.
Really?
She was doing a t-shirt printing company.
That's
at
cool.
the time, and I was just like an idea I wanted to make. So anyway.
No, that is a really cool design. So let's talk a little bit about the main hero of the day. What was some of the inspiration for his design? A vibrant red cap. We got some bracelets going on. What's what's going on with them?
It's hilarious too, because the red cap thing, this was before 2016. So for me, I designed Jake to have red, white, and blue as being his main clothing colors. Because I just wanted to be like representative of.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, to me, I was just like, oh, this is just America, Like I just wanted to be kind of representative of like everyman America, and because he. Like right now we don't see him in his jacket, but like he has a kind of like a blue denim jacket, red cap, and then like a white undershirt or tank top.
Oh my God, do you get that a lot though? Ask it if that's what.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, in 3, I changed his cap for a while to just like it has the cap that he wears in that one actually has like important significance for story reasons, but like. I just changed it because it's like I just don't want to deal with it right now.
So I thought you were gonna say like zombies ate my neighbor or something. No, so that is awesome. So Jake has a client, and I love how this lady like she's like my horse is a husband, and that. So what exactly is stamp time? Is that just him charging up his sigil?
Yep, that's his stamp time. He's just charging that sigil up on his stamp. And I think also for Jake, it's just like instead of meditation, that's what he does instead, just to kind of get out his frustration or whatever. But yeah,
I love this too. Like something's wrong with my husband. I see the floating skull in a preserved jar right here.
He's changed. And it's like, not a private eye, ma'am.
Yeah, I love that too. He's almost borderline like cocky, and then she's like, oh, he's transformed, and he's like, oh, now you're ringing that, that's a little bit up my alleyway.
And I really enjoy this story for the setting. When I try and like create a story, I try and think of the setting as like one of the main characters. And so the setting of this takes place around the Colorado Springs area, and I just. To me, it was like, oh, this could be a good place to sort of have. I want to give this sort of American vibe to the story, and you get like the American flag waving in the background, and I like
truck.
Yep, Jake's pickup.
I love it. And the thing is too, I don't think I noticed the American flag until like scrolling through and with you mentioning it too. Just because like when I was reading, it was on my phone screen. So looking at it on a computer kind of like really helps me kind of get like a deeper dive into
There's
it.
a ton of detail that I think does get kind of lost when you get into like a smaller screen for sure.
So what's this necklace that he's wearing too? Because I noticed that's kind of prevalent in a lot of the images I see him.
Yeah, his collar. So that's actually the entire premise of season 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can give you the short answer is that it protects him from a curse that he has.
Okay. So was there any milky discharge? She's like, no. Just what you see. And I love this. Is him just chilling there with and when I got to this part, I was like, yep, this is exactly the type of comic I want to be reading right now. This is great.
And that's one of my favorite things about these early episodes is the way that I like arranged them was I always had this big visual that I wanted to set up for, so like a gag or whatever. And there's multiple obviously in this episode, but like this was one of the gags for me. It was just like a horse wearing a baseball cap. Sometimes the simplest gag, all you need. And that's kind of a
hell of a thing, ma'am.
Hell of a thing, man. Jake and the Equimancer.
So I love this. Is like, so what do you think? And he's like, well, and then the horse is walking with his ass like right.
Horse butt. You can't go wrong with a horse butt.
I just need to know if there's gonna be like, and she's like, do I need to prepare for this? Like, what's going on? And then maybe, do you own horses, ma'am? And then a couple, and then so it was really weird too, because the horses aren't like common in these parts, right?
Oh, in Colorado.
Or because I could have sworn I read something where he said the horses weren't common. That's how he knew it was the Equimancer.
Oh, I'm trying to remember actually. You're reminding me of something that I don't even remember very well in this story. I think he says that Equimancers aren't common in this part.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what he said.
Okay. So we see him just with the hat chewing up grass, and then there's another horse. And then I love this too. When I seen this horse, I was like, this horse looks sus. Like this, something's up with this guy. Like he looks angry, the way he's alert. Like,
I can tell you something that I learned in drawing this episode. Horses are not the easiest thing to draw. I learned how to draw them at the end of this episode, but it took me a while to get to that point.
I heard horses and cars are like some of the worst like banes for artists.
Yeah, cars are tricky. Pickup trucks surprisingly are kind of easy to draw, or at least they were for me. I think a lot of it also has to do with how interested you are in drawing the subject. And initially for me, I was just like, oh, the gag is that it's horses. I didn't think about like I would actually have to draw horses. I've never drawn a horse in my life, but great way to learn,
Yeah, no, I mean, I could definitely, I would have sworn you were able to like draw them for years. I mean, you had the like anatomy of it down like pretty spot on.
A lot of just finding pictures and then just drawing pictures of horses in my sketchbook.
Is this a gold tooth right here?
Oh, wait. I think it looks gold, but it's not intentional.
Oh,
gold. Yeah.
I was like, what's up with this horse?
I guess it could have a gold tooth. I don't see why not.
Yeah, a little bling bling. So right here, I love this part too. He like looks all super sus, picks up a rock and then just freaking beams him right in the forehead. And then he's like,
insufferable.
Yeah, I love it. Dude, this must have been so much fun, like drawing these.
I love that. That panel was a lot of fun to draw because that was like, I don't know why that was an expression that just immediately, like, no trouble drawing. Just like my head was like, this is what needs to happen.
And then the way he talks, was it any challenging, like coming up with like his like speech pattern?
I mean, like I did have to do a little bit of like going back and reading some Shakespeare because that's kind of where I got the speech from. I found out too that, and this was not an intentional thing. This is a thing that happens a lot to me with writing is I will do something and then later on find out like, oh yeah, this thing exists in the world. So like Equius apparently was some kind of like play that people did in like the Renaissance period.
Oh,
there
really?
was like this whole thing with like somebody wearing a horse head and I think playing the spirit or something. This is kind of old information, but like a friend who read this comic was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, did you know this?" And I was like, "Oh no, I did not at all."
It says send the boys to shut him up right now. This is all 100% unique to you. Well, it just really goes to show you that, you know, almost every single story has been told, but like everyone has like a unique way to tell their own. I would have never known. If you would have never brought it up, I would have never known it. And I can almost guarantee like 97% of your reading audience probably never knows either.
But it was just like a fun gag that popped up in my head because like this is one of my favorite things I drew in this early season because A, it kind of reminds me of an Animorphs cover, but then B, like it's just a cool like transformation sequence. I haven't really done anything like that since this.
I love it. And the way he looks down, he's like, I don't want any trouble, Equimancer. So how'd you come up with this name? Is this a real name, or did you combine like the two names to make this?
So something that becomes kind of a thing in this story is that there are a lot of different Mancers. Equimancer is just like combining equine with Mancer. And something that becomes sort of a general world building thing is there are a lot of different Mancers in this world, and in fact there's a union of them. So like Jake is part of a Mancers union. And he works as a warlock and pays, you know, his fees to the Mancers union to like help with jobs and all this other stuff, basically.
Oh, that is awesome. Just receive thy reward. I love this too. Freaking turns him into a horse.
I had a lot of fun. That's also kind of like a little weird. When he's just like blurts a holy. That's kind of a weird tagline that I have for Jake whenever he gets in trouble. I had a lot of fun drawing like the weird spell effects.
No, this is so cool. And then the horse cane too, or is it like a scepter almost? Yeah,
the horse scepter. Very, and I think that was for me. It was like kind of the joke was like it's just like this horse obsession kind of is what defines the Equimancer.
No more holier than the ground thou shalt chew.
He's and then the
Mr. Jake, I love the wife, just like so indifferent, like not going stepping in to help at all. She's like, oh god, everyone's turning into horses around me.
Stay back, man. This is beyond your reckoning.
So I love how Jake is able to like muster his way through this too. Like what was he able to do? Like is it just the fact he's a warlock? He was able to like, you know, work through it.
He's just got some kind of internal arts to fight back the magic of the Equimancer, basically.
But only part way though, because
only his hands.
He just gets his hands, and I love. He's like, wait, how? And he's like, thou must be some manner of. That's right, you're dealing with a warlock. And I love this shot too. So is this that vertical page you were telling about?
Yeah, that was the panel I was talking about, because it needs to be a big panel. So like if you had turned it sideways, it'd be teeny tiny.
Yeah.
So me and my editor were kind of like chewing on it. He was like, well, you know what? Just turn it sideways. That's the best way it'll work, you know.
And I think it works perfect too. I never would have guessed. That's another thing too. I never would have guessed when I was reading through this. I thought the way, you know, you had it like worked perfect.
Yeah, it works. And that's the important part, is it works.
And then that's it. If you guys want more, you're going to have to check out the website we put there. And man, these episodes get so good. Holy crap, Matt. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, breaking down episode 1 and Trailer Park Warlock in general. So I know we were talking about your contract is coming up. What's next for you? Like, what are you going to be working on next?
Well, right before we got on, I was actually doing character designs for my next story. And my intention is it's going to take place within the same universe, but at a later date. So like, as I was saying earlier, Trailer Park Warlock takes place sort of 1997 to 2000, and so this next story I'm thinking about is going to be not really that much more current. I mean, it's going to be 2012-ish area.
Okay.
And that's going to be a significant change because that's going to bring in sort of modern technology, right? It's going to bring in smartphones and the internet.
Oh, that's cool.
What all that entails, basically. So I'm thinking about it as a story that's like, with everything established already, how would that be impacted by, the incursion of all this sort of technology that we live in nowadays?
Oh, and there's so much you could do. Like 2012 is a pretty significant year
Yeah,
as well.
well,
That's when the CERN first happened, right?
Yep.
And everyone thought the end of the world happened. Like there's so much going on with that.
The Mayan calendars and all that.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Are you going to still like be on Webtoons, or are you going to be doing this like on your own thing? Like,
well, my intention is to do it on Webtoon. I really like the platform a lot. It has been one of the easiest publishing experiences. My community sort of built around the Webtoon platform, so I don't really see a reason to change platforms right now. At the same time, I will probably start working on actually printing Trailer Park Warlock once this is all said and done.
that is so awesome.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that because that's going to be... It's a slightly different way of reading the story. There are... And that's going to be its own unique challenge for me, sort of getting the story rigged up for print in a way that suits like what I want out of it, basically. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next story that's coming up. It's actually, I'm at this point now while I'm writing it where it's a fun place to be in, but it's a little bit scary because you have to kind of like be there when your brain, like be ready when your brain's like, oh, and here's an idea, and just write it down,
Yeah.
That's where I am right now, where it's just like there's this stream of ideas that are coming that I'm enjoying that rush.
I recently just started getting into script writing, and I remember I was in my garage, and it was one of those things where I was like, on my 100th interview, I'm going to start writing a comic at some point. I don't know when, but I ordered Scott McCloud, I ordered Brian Michael Bendis book, and I was like, I got these, I'm going to read them. Not right now. I'm gonna get caught up on editing and stuff, but at some point. And then I was in my garage, and it just happened. I busted out the recorder because I remember it happened once, and I was like, I was sleeping. I was like, I'll remember in the morning, and I never did. So I pulled my phone, I started recording, and I was like, dude, that was the smartest thing I've ever done.
It's one of my favorite feelings because it's kind of a mysterious too. I think that's also why I like it, because it's like I don't really know where the ideas come from necessarily, but they come, and it's sort of like it's sort of one of those things where you just feel like you kind of connected to something a little bit bigger than yourself to a certain extent, where you're just like pulling ideas from the ether or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, wow, this was such an awesome sit down. Thank you so much once again. Let's finish strong though. Because as much as this is a podcast to promote you and your work, it is also a nice learning tool for anyone out there starting for the first time. So with that being said, for anyone watching for the first time that might be like, so let's say struggling with just getting any sort of story going or any sort of like script started, what type of advice would you offer them just to get started?
Getting started, don't worry about whether or not what you're going to make is going to be good. I think that's my first most important advice to give. Just make it, and make it short. Make it something where you can execute it in like let's say a month, And once you get that first story under your belt, you start building from there. And like I said, don't worry about whether or not it's good. Good kind of comes with experience, and experience comes with time. And find confidence in that over time you'll get better, right? And if you find confidence in that, like, you can do anything. You just have to give it the time and give it the effort, basically.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for such an awesome response. I always appreciate the ones that are a little bit different. A lot of people say just go or just do it. And those are awesome pieces of advice as well. But I love when it's just a little bit different, because that might be just what someone needs to hear. And, anytime that happens, that's always a win. So with that being said, guys, it is a beautiful, beautiful Monday night. We're going to be wrapping things up. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday. Check out Matt, excuse me. I almost had a brain fart there. Matt's. I almost called you. I was almost thinking of your last name as your first name.
That is not the most unusual thing. A lot of people call me Rainwater. So.
Well, that's good to hear. On New Comic Book Day, be sure to check out this webtoon. Be sure to check them all out. And then you have how many episodes available?
Currently 120.
So 120 episodes with a few more in sight, and then it's going to be completely wrapped up. So be sure to check it out before it wraps up completely. With that being said, we do have to wrap up ourselves. I hope you guys have an awesome night, but most importantly, keep it geekly.